Hello, I'm Dylan Blaylock with Clackamas County's Public and Government Affairs Department. Good to have you with us tonight. Tonight, we are talking all things Ncprd, the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. Tonight, with us is Clackamas County Commissioner Paul Savas and Clackamas County Administrator Gary Schmidt. My thanks to each of them for joining us tonight. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of how things are going to proceed. First, Commissioner Savas is going to give some opening comments, and then residents and other interested parties, anybody on the call is going to be allowed to relay any comments to Commissioner Savas about Ncprd, anything involving Ncprd. We're probably going to try to keep those to around 2 to 3 minutes. We'll let you know right before we open it up. After all comments are initially heard, Commissioner Savas is going to take some time and may respond to some specific questions, some of the trends that he hears, that sort of thing. And then there'll be another sort of open round after that of Q&A. That's your opportunity for any attendees to go ahead and ask any questions that you have, any follow-up specifically that Commissioner Savas talks about. Residents can also send comments to be relayed over email during the meeting. I will go ahead and share my screen now so you see that. You can go ahead and send those to clackconews@clackamas.us. And if you could add Savas Ncprd or something along those lines in the subject line, that would help me. And please include your name and try to keep your comments to under 2 minutes. The other thing I will mention from the get-go, just for clarification purposes, is this meeting tonight is separate from the Ncprd Board of Directors meeting that is slated for this coming Monday, August 17th. That Monday meeting, which features the full board of all 5 Clackamas County Commissioners, will primarily center, as you can see, on the Ncprd Advisory Board bylaws update for the staff update, public comments, and then board deliberation. For tonight, I will prompt any attendee as to when it is time and how to go ahead and give comments that will be coming obviously from you. But with that, we will start off with opening comments from Commissioner Savas. Commissioner Savas.
Great. Well, thank you all for attending. A little bit of background about how we got here today. In May, the Jennings Lodge CPO held a panel discussion on Ncprd, and I was asked to join that panel discussion, which we did. And there were a lot of questions, and the time ran a little bit short. So during that time, knowing there were a lot of questions that we hadn't got to, I offered to host a town hall if people were interested. And so in the at that meeting in the coming day or two, a lot of people asked for that, and got some communication from folks in Oak Grove as well. So, you know, here we are today, and we are now having that meeting. So I want to just thank the Jennings Lodge CPO members for their interest in this issue. I also felt it was important during this time to make people aware of the happenings in Ncprd and bring people up to speed. So that is what this town hall is for, and the intended audience is for all residents of the district who may not be aware of the changes that have occurred or the changes that are occurring. Our PGA staff, Public and Government Affairs, sent out advertisements of this town hall that were posted on Nextdoor and Facebook last Thursday afternoon, and that was done district-wide. Others, such as CPOs, have circulated this event to their membership, just as they normally circulate any event that occurs in their area. The format this evening is to open it up for comments for the first 40 or so minutes. I'm going to take comments. If there's something that is, you know, a common theme that needs to be addressed early on or a misunderstanding, we'll try to do that. But I want people just to make their comments. If you have something that you want to talk about in greater detail, please mention that. We're going to take notes, and we can talk about it at greater length in the second half. So there is an opportunity for Q&A back and forth in the second half. So again, if you have ideas, just mention those in the first round, and you can comment, and we'll just take your note. We'll just take the comments one at a time. Please be courteous and respectful to others. I'm not sure how many comments we'll actually get, but if there's plenty of time, we'll just keep on going. I mentioned the themes. In the middle, after the first round, I will address any clarifications that need to be made. and then I'll pass it over to Dylan back, and then he will open it up for the Q&A and manage that. So I'd like to get started. I'll share a brief PowerPoint with you all, and I'm a little bit of a novice, so hang on. And is that showing on your screen, everyone?
Yes.
Okay, great. So about Ncprd. So the voters approved the formation of Ncprd in 1990. Come November, it'll be our 30th anniversary or birthday, if you will. It covers a 27 square mile portion of Clackamas County, the service district does. It's guided or advised by a district advisory board and is governed by the Board of County Commissioners, who serve as the governing board of the Ncprd Board of Directors. Strategic direction is informed by the master plan, which was, I believe that was 2004, the master plan was adopted. And there was a second master plan that was worked on, but it was never adopted. It was somewhat incomplete, as staff advised me. And so therefore, we're still operating on the 2004 master plan. And the permanent tax rate for the district is about 54 cents per thousand. And the next slide that I want to share with you is, this is a basic map of the district. It shows the parks. If you see my cursor right here, from this area upwards is pretty much Milwaukee area. To your right, my right, is the Happy Valley area. And part of that district is still served. Happy Valley did withdraw from the district. So, but this area, approximately part of this area is still in the Ncprd district. And then this lower area right here is the Oak Grove, Oakfield, Jennings Lodge area. And you can see here by some of the markings there that how busy this is. You can see there's a number of parks in Milwaukee. It's pretty. Milwaukee's done a great job. They have a number of parks. I think it's close to 20 parks. Their population is about 21,000, so that's about a park or so per 1,000 people. The Oak Grove area is about 35,000 people. If we go all the way to 205, it's actually greater than that. This area right here, that adds about another 10, 15,000 people. So there's not very many parks here, which is part of the discussion that's happening right now. Timeline. So just a high level timeline of where we've been. 1990, the district was formed. Approval of the master plan in 2004, as I mentioned. Happy Valley joined the district in 2006. The BCC directed the DAB to revise the bylaws in 2019 in anticipation that Happy Valley would be withdrawing, because we were going through some settlement work with the city of Happy Valley. The legislature approved that in 2019, and it's effective. The governor signed the bill, so it's effective actually in 2020. So as effective as June 30th or July 1st of this year, Happy Valley is now on their own. So we're back to the original configuration of the district. So the Happy Valley withdraws from the district. The board of directors advised the DAB to revise the bylaws to match that. And so that's the work that's currently being done. And that's where we are today. So that's a high level overview. I know there's been a lot of comments, and I'll let people just add to the theme. That way it's the theme or the discussion tonight is based on your input, not mine. And we'll get started. So Dylan, back to you.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. If you could, there we go. Excellent. Okay, so as Commissioner Savas was just saying, first we are going to go take public comments on anything related to Ncprd, all things Ncprd, as I would say. You can let us know that you have a comment by utilizing the raise hand function on Zoom now. That's at the top or bottom, depending on your device. Again, raise hand on Zoom. If you are on the phone, and I do see we have several individuals on the phone, you can hit *9, and that effectively raises your hand as well, and that lets me know that you have a comment. So again, raise your hand on Zoom using the raise hand function, or if you're on the phone, hit *9. And I see we have a couple hands going up. We'll try to limit this to 3 minutes if that works for you, Commissioner. Does that sound good, Paul?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay, so our first is Grover Jeffrey Bornfeld. Grover, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go. And please, well, just give your name, your general area, and keep your comment to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is Grover Jeffrey Bornefeld. I've lived here for 30 years in Jennings Lodge, and I really never want to have a chance. I always want to, when I have a chance to speak, to acknowledge that from the time I've started participating in the Clackamas County leadership world and the government here, have appreciated the general direction, the progress being made, and have always been one to point out there's still more to go, but I do want to acknowledge the trajectory. So since I've lived here for 30 years, when we joined back then, there were a number of promises being made by the ballot measure, and it specifically talked about preserving open space and building parks, and that the district will serve unincorporated areas east of the Willamette River, north of the Clackamas River, west of the urban growth boundary, and south of the Multnomah County line. But that's to serve unincorporated areas. I just can't underline that enough. And then it says it includes the city of Milwaukee. And it also goes on to the second page to talk about it excludes Gladstone, it excludes Happy Valley, it excludes Johnson City, and it excludes the city of Portland. My point is, from the get-go, the focus was on the deficit or lack of parks in the North Clackamas area, the urban area of North Clackamas, and how to bring that up even to the standard of the rest of Clackamas County, let alone the surrounding areas. And so here we said 30 years later, I appreciated Paul showing the map. It adequately shows there's been a lot of progress. The only challenge is it has not affected a significant portion of the population. And if we had, I don't want to go through the map again, we can do this in a different conversation. But in truth, there's 80,000 people who live in unincorporated, and the lion's share of that 80,000 still has significant park deficiency. It actually says in the Clackamas County Comprehensive Plan, specific guidelines. And for the people who live in Milwaukee, so you may or may not be it may not apply to you, but you're only 21,000 out of, and there's another 80,000 that it does apply to. And it specifically addresses and names the Oak Lodge area as being one of the most underserved areas, and we sit to this day to the same. I live in Jennings Lodge. We do not have any neighborhood parks in Jennings Lodge. We have a nature park and we have a trolley trail going through here, but nowhere I can go and have a picnic, nowhere I can go and walk my dog. Any of those things are not available here. I'd have to get in my car and drive somewhere else. So, don't want to change the past, but I really want to speak to, my focus is on how do we go forward from here? It's not about anything about the past other than the past has gone a lot in other areas, and it's time to adjust back to what the original promises were. And so to that end, we've been focusing on how do those decisions get made? How do those choices get made? Who decides where those things go? So we have been working to adjust, and I very much appreciate the BCC as the board of directors directing that we would in fact change how the DAB is constructed, how the representation of the unincorporated is. And I actually had the pleasure of serving on that committee. We made extraordinary progress and then somehow hit a speed bump of some sort, but then all of a sudden we were canceled and there was no more going forward. And now all of us have timed out, and so it's time to reapply, and hopefully I'll get back on, because I think there's a huge opportunity. We are much better working together. However, we have to work together, keeping in mind what the majority / the entire group needs, and look at where the deficits are and focus on those. So that's the main things I want to say now, and I'd like to speak again later after I've heard what other people said. So I don't know where I am on my 3 minutes, but I'm done now. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that, Grover. Appreciate that very much. And next, the next comment is going to come from Ben Johnson. So Ben Johnson, if you can please unmute yourself. There you go. Just
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go
Great.
right ahead.
My name is Ben Johnson, and I live in the city of Milwaukee, and I was recently on the district advisory board in the very short period of time when we were working on the bylaws similar to Grover. And I appreciate everything that Grover had to say and the presentation that Paul gave and the map. There's something a little misleading about the map that I think people on the phone or listening should probably understand the context of why there are so many parks or considered so many parks in Milwaukee, and the relationship of the city of Milwaukee's ownership of the sites versus the unincorporated areas. I think that's a very important fact that people need to know going into this. So Paul, if you are able to expand on the city's ownership of those properties and why there are so many. So like, you know, Ncprd did not purchase all those sites. Those sites were owned by the city, and Ncprd, the relationship with the city and Ncprd is that they maintain city-owned sites. So I think that that's an important fact for people to know going into this. So it's a quite unique situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, for that. You know, you're absolutely right. I applaud Milwaukee for their years, decades of acquisitions of land for parks. They have done a great job. Ben, you're absolutely right. They own those parks. That was part of the agreement early on that the city of Milwaukee would continue to own those parks. And I think we may have added one or two or improved several of them along the way since that, during that 30 years. So a lot of those parks are, you know, even developed. I believe when I looked at the list from 1990, I don't even think that the Riverfront Park or Milwaukee Bay Park was even on that original list. So it is now, certainly, and it's a major, vast improvement. So Milwaukee has a lot to be proud of, and they should be applauded for their work and efforts in acquiring parks. So my congratulations to that. And again, thank you for pointing it out, Ben.
Okay, excellent. Let me see. I will remind individuals one more time who are listening, if you do not want to give a comment over Zoom or on the phone and you'd rather go ahead and email it in, I am happy to read it. That email address again is clacconews@clackamas.us, clacconews@clackamas.us. And again, if you would like to go ahead and make a comment now to Commissioner Savas, all things NCPRD, please utilize the raise hand function on Zoom. Again, that's on the top or bottom, depending on your device. And again, if you are on the phone, I do see that we have 3 phone-in listeners. You can hit *9, and that lets me know that you have a comment. Our next comment is from Brett Sherman, or at least that is the handle on Zoom. So, Mr. Sherman, if it is you, go ahead and give your name, your area, and try to keep your comments at 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Savas, Mr. Blaylock, Mr. Schmidt, very good to see you all. Glad you're not seeing me at the same time, which is wonderful. I live in Happy Valley. The used to be part of NCPRD, but now not. And really my purpose this evening is to really just kind of think through, and I'd like Commissioner Savas to kind of maybe explain a little bit about, there are portions of the unincorporated area that are very difficult to provide resources to. And I know that historically NCPRD has always had a limited level of resources, really trying to satisfy a large group of constituents, 120,000 individuals at the peak. And so one of the things, Commissioner Savas, you and I have talked about quite often is that there are many parts of, and I apologize, I don't remember the exact areas, but many parts of the areas in the unincorporated west of 205 that have, not only do they have a lack of facilities, but they also don't have appropriate kind of walkable transportation areas where residents can get to parks. And so I know a lot of the roads are very unsafe. A lot of neighborhoods don't have kind of local pocket parks, things like that. So maybe just a couple of comments from you on kind of how you see, maybe with your commissioner hat on, how you see providing those resources that then make it easier to expand the parks in those areas and make them accessible. And then maybe a thought about, as the district moves forward in its current configuration, what resources or what methods could the district use to expand the resources to make the facilities more available? And I know that there are bonding opportunities, things like that. So I'm really kind of teeing this up as a conversation so that you can share with the audience kind of what tools they have in their toolbox. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Sherman, Council President Sherman still, I believe, for that. That's a good point. The unincorporated area is basically governed by the Board of County Commissioners. As far as the Parks District, they're the same people, but we wear a different hat. When I go back and I look at some of the documents during the time of the formation, there was a model in which the areas were divided up into 7 sub areas, and I'm going to expand on that probably on Monday night. But each of those were supposed to have an influx of cash, an infusion of cash that was committed by the county at the time, as I understand it. And the city of Milwaukee, in the North Clackamas Parks, Milwaukee Center area, was granted about $2 to $3 million for one of their projects from the county general fund. And then Happy Valley area at the Hoodview site was also granted $2-3-ish million as well. That cash infusion never made it to the remainder of the district or any of those sub areas, as I understand it. Now, I'm still digging on that. And without that cash infusion, there's no way to really catch back up. You're correct as far as access. We are slowly building sidewalks when grant monies come available. Jennings Lodge will actually, or Jennings Avenue will see a sidewalk improvement, for example, but there's miles of local roads that have no safe access to, and let alone getting to parks, but there are no parks in a lot of that area. So yes, you're absolutely right. The other element that I will add on, I know staff at Ncprd have been very mindful about this. They have always mentioned that the original idea was that there was limited money. The 54 cents per thousand was not ample enough revenue to actually acquire a lot of land in the first place. And so in the master plan or master plans, it's pointed out that the plan was to go out for a bond, a capital bond, to acquire parks. The county commissioners set forth on that 5 or 6 years ago. Unfortunately, the voters didn't approve it, and we did not have that ability to have that cash to actually advance the area. So I believe I captured your points, and I'll turn it back over to Dylan.
All right, excellent. Thank you for that, Mr. Sherman, very much. Next comment is from Jan Carruthers. Carruthers or Carruthers. So Ms. Carruthers, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go. And just provide your name, your general area, and please keep your comment to about 3 minutes or so. Thanks.
Thank you. Jan Carruthers, Jennings Lodge, Boardman Avenue. Thank you for doing this, Paul. I appreciate it. And I'm wondering if you could speak to a little bit more about the division of the dividing up the district into individual places that received money according to the SDCs that were in that area. In other words, money stayed in the area where the SDCs were generated. And then I understand that that was voted to be different, and the district was intended to be reunited so that the areas where there weren't a lot of SDCs would also receive at least a portion of the money rather than none of the money. Since that agreement was made, I don't know that it has been implemented. What can you say about that?
Yeah, thank you, Jan. Happy to comment there. The SDC conversation is a complicated one, so I'll just do a high-level overview. The SDCs, for those who don't know, those are system development charges. So when a builder or someone develops their property, they will pay system development charges for growth, for their share of the growth, for water and sewer, parks, and so on. So the parks SDC monies get accrued by new development that happens in that particular area. The district was divided up in 3 zones, zone 1, 2, and 3. And Happy Valley, I believe, was zone 3. They had, because of their high growth, they had a substantial amount of SDCs. Zone 2, which was the Oak Field, Oak Grove, Jennings Lodge area, North Clackamas, unincorporated. That generated modest revenues, but much higher than Zone 1 Milwaukee, because Milwaukee is an established city, pretty well built out, a little bit of development, but it does not generate a lot currently. There is one development that's occurring off of Lake Road. So yes, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, there was a subcommittee of Ncprd or the DAB that studied that SDC methodology or system, and they apparently voted or came to a conclusion that they would eliminate the zones. So that would essentially put those SDCs back in the mix. As I talk to staff, I believe my recollection, and if I'm mistaken, I'll make sure staff corrects me. But I believe that is we're moving forward on that assumption that the decision by that committee will be effective, and the SDCs, there are no longer any zones, as I understand it. But I don't know if that's actually been something that has been completely codified. So with that, I don't know how much money is there. There's not a lot, but it certainly is enough money to do something or acquire land. One thing that Councillor Sherman did mention a little bit, or I probably should touch on based on his comments, was that we've had a couple opportunities to buy land, and I have brought those in the last 10 years when they come available. I've brought that to the attention of the Board of County Commissioners, wearing the hat of Ncprd or Board of Directors, and we didn't make much traction. There was a vote or two here and there. We didn't have enough support for that. And we could have acquired some key properties, but we were not able to get that across the finish line at the time. I believe that answers your question, or highlights your point, Jan. Thank you. Do you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, not really. But if we did eliminate those zones, would it affect other money, just the general revenue from the department as well? Would it be divided?
No, the SDC monies are actually separate from the tax base. So the tax base is collected throughout the district. It's not steered any one way or another by any zone. There are no zones or areas. So the tax base goes into the general fund of the district as a whole. So as I understand it, going forward, there will be no division of the dollars, as I understand it, including SDC dollars.
Okay. Okay, great. All right, thank you very much for that, Jan. Appreciate the comment. Let me see, I don't have another hand up, so I'll just go ahead and remind all attendees, if you want to go ahead and provide a comment to Commissioner Savas right now before he starts fielding some of the comments that have been made and some of the general trends, you can go ahead and hit the raise hand feature right now. That's function on Zoom is at the top or bottom of your Zoom interface, depending on your device. And if you are on the phone, you can hit *9. Again, we still have 3 people on the phone. Oh, we got one more. There you go. Okay, Jan Lindstrom. Jan, if you want to go ahead and provide your name, your general area, and please keep your comment to 3 minutes. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Jan Lindstrom. I live in Oak Grove near River Road and Laurelwood Drive. Hi, everyone. Thank you for doing this town hall, Paul. And I still do have a lot of confusion about the funding sources of Ncprd. And for those who are listening who may be novices to the whole SDC funding concept, can you clarify a little bit about, like, we have a lot of very high-end houses along the river in Oak Grove, okay? Houses that sell for $2 million, $1 million, whatever. But we don't have a lot of industry. Is that one reason why we would be considered SDC deficient in the unincorporated area? and what's the difference between SDCs from houses and I guess industry or businesses? Is there a different percentage that it contributes? I guess that's my question.
Okay. Well, being that we have some time, I think I will. I wasn't planning on addressing these, but I think I will because we don't have that many people in the audience. So I'll just answer that. So really, I think using the Happy Valley example, if there's what we call greenfield or bare land that's undeveloped, and there's a lot of it, there is great opportunity for SDCs because someone will eventually be building on that property. Areas like Oak Grove and Jennings Lodge, the city of Milwaukee, are pretty established, so there's not a lot of vacant land. If someone puts in a subdivision, for example, and adds a lot of new parcels and subdivides that, then those are opportunities for SDCs. So unless there's that kind of scenario, the fact that most of the district, as it sits today, is developed, the potential for SDCs is not as high as some of the areas in Happy Valley that have been growing.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for your question.
Great. Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much, Jan. Appreciate that. Next, we're going to go to, I do not know the name of the individual because we're going to go to a phone call. So if your phone ends in the 3 digits of 409, you are on. Just go ahead and provide your name, your general area, and try to keep your comment to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, Paul. This is Koi Tolinen, and thanks for arranging this. One thing I was concerned about is when we voted for this years ago, there was nothing about the FCC, and it was just that if we voted for it, we would get more parks in the area. I feel that there was a bit of bait and switch on us. And when the campground came up and the county commissioners passed on that, that was one of our last really good pieces of property to develop a natural park. Now they're proposing taking a corner of the school ground, the old Jennings Lodge school ground, as part of the park. I'm very opposed to that. We pay property taxes to the school district to maintain that and to provide this play equipment. Our local children, most of them don't even go to that school. They're bused to Holcomb. I don't see that is really a workable idea because the playground is usually closed off, and especially during the day, and you can't take your dogs there. So what does the county propose as far as a site for a park for this area?
Well, I'll do my best I can with that. Thank you for the question. I did approach the school district. In this case, that school you're referring to is the Oregon City School District. I did approach one of the school district board members here a few years ago saying, by the way, if those schools are ever closed, I would certainly be interested. I would like to bring it to the board of directors of Ncprd for a possible acquisition. That led to conversations with another parcel, a school property that could be used for park purposes. And I guess, I don't know what everyone else thinks about it. Personally, my own personal opinion, I think something is better than nothing. And I know that the director of Ncprd, Scott Archer, has been in negotiations and working on that and has presented that to the Ncprd District Advisory Board. So I'm not sure where we are on the status of that, but a permanent location that we own that has the touch and the feel and the access of parks is something that we should definitely strive for. So your point's taken there, I agree. If school's in session and the school children are using it, oftentimes those parks are not accessible to adults or other people from out of town or whatever it may be. It doesn't have that wide range of uses, but again, something's better than nothing. But we'll put that in the queue for the second session if there's more comments along those lines. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for that comment. Next, we're going to go to Lisa Beatty. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Lisa, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Very good. And provide your name, your general area, and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Lisa Beatty. I live in the city of Milwaukee in the Island Station neighborhood, so near to Oak Grove. I'm also a city of Milwaukee counselor. I wanted to clarify a couple of things that have been said. First off, the reference to Milwaukee having gotten money for North Clackamas Park from the county, and I suspect this is also true of Hoodview. That money was for building ball fields, which were considered a regional asset, not a city of Milwaukee park. I would tell you that money, if citizens of Milwaukee, I was on the planning commission at the time those ball fields came through. It was a very tense process, and the citizens would much rather have had a nature park or a community park than ball fields for the most part, except the ones who play ball. So I don't think it's really appropriate to compare that kind of a facility with a neighborhood, with neighborhood parks or even nature parks. And that investment as something in Milwaukee's parks, because I don't really feel that it was. Secondly, on Milwaukee being built out and not contributing SDCs, I think that has generally been true between sort of the time the district was formed and about 2015. But since the light rail arrived and given the housing pressures in the region, Milwaukee has actually seen a lot of construction since 2015. There are in the pipeline, built since then or in the pipeline, approximately 500 to 600 apartments, which will all be paying SDCs. Apartments pay a lower SDC than single family homes, but they still pay an SDC. And I think the pipeline is somewhere in the vicinity of 200 to 250 homes in the last 5 years or under construction now. That does not hold a candle to Happy Valley. It's true. I think Happy Valley, I think I heard their city, their public works director recently say they're on par to build 300 this year. I don't think we're having those kind of numbers, but the numbers of SDCs accrued by Milwaukee have definitely gone up the last 5 years. And finally, I would just make a point of, talking about where you might identify places for parks, and you're talking about school grounds and things like that. I will say that a couple of Milwaukee's neighborhood parks were purchased, were basically blighted properties. They were problem properties. I think it was a little before my time, but I understand in one case it was like a drug house or something. In another case, it was just a very rundown home that was on, sort of not worth repairing. And the city managed to, because the property had been devalued so much, the city managed to buy the properties at a good price and convert them into neighborhood parks. So that's also something that residents should keep in mind as a potential way to identify sites for future parks. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for your contribution. And it's good to hear right from the source, folks, that looks like there's a lot of activity happening in Milwaukee. So that's good information. I appreciate it, Lisa.
All right.
Next, Dylan.
Yep. Thank you very much for that, Councilor Beatty. Next, we are going to go to Jan Carruthers, has her hand up again. And she was next in line. So Jan, if you have another comment, please go right ahead.
I do. I have another question, and it's a money question. I appreciate all of us talking about Happy Valley, and I understand that they've taken whatever they had with them, so they're really not a factor for the conversation going forward. So I'm curious, beyond SDCs, I don't know how much money actually comes in from the taxes. And, probably maybe Gary knows that. I noticed there's no Ncprd people here. So just curious, how much money is there for property acquisition anywhere in the remaining district?
Jan, I'm going to try and, I think I might have a slide here. Hang on. that has that on there.
As long as I understand some of it is for maintenance, but there must be some left over that we could buy, just like Lisa said, you know, damaged properties. Just
Yeah.
curious.
Yeah, so I'm gonna share a screen here. It might be somewhat depictive. I'm not sure it's accurate, but I'll do the best I can, folks. So get back here, share screen. Okay, if you can all see that. And if I look at the bar here, that's about $5 million, a little over $5 million of revenue generated in 2018, 2019 fiscal year. And I got to add to that the Milwaukee portion, which looks like it is $1 million. So it's about, if my memory serves, it's about $6-7 million a year of property tax revenue, approximately, is generated by the district per year with Happy Valley out. So this, I think that last bar there, these last two bars, the gold green one there and the blue added together come up to close to 7 million or so. If that's accurate, then again, that's the tax base at work currently. A lot of that goes towards programs. It goes towards park maintenance, property maintenance, admin, all those other things in the district. Unless Gary, do you have anything to add, Gary, that you have any insight on?
That darn mute button. I don't have it offhand. I'm actually looking at the budget online right now, and I just can't pull it out right away for you. I'm sorry.
Okay. If we can find that answer, Jan, we'll get back to you with it.
Okay. Excellent. All right. All right. Thank you very much, Jan. I see another hand has gone up. It looks like Grover has another comment. So we will go ahead and go to Grover. Grover, go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go. And please keep your comment under 3 minutes. Thanks.
Thank you. I just want to comment on how the conversation's flowing. There's a couple of things there, though. So if you looked at that chart that Paul just showed, then it would say that the unincorporated is paying the vast majority of the maintenance on parks, and that everyone's benefiting from those maintenance. Since most of the parks are not in the unincorporated, that means the unincorporated is actually subsidizing the parks that are elsewhere. At least it seems that way to me, and I don't have the details on that. And the other part about zones, I'm really looking forward to, the deal was, and what the voters voted for was one parks district. And then somewhere along the line, we ended up with zones, and then we ended up with that the zones kept their money in the zone, which for me was really back to a previous caller talked about bait and switch. I don't know about bait and switch, but I certainly don't think it was following, and however it got approved, I have questions of how that fit with what the voters approved for the funding to come in to create a special district for the unincorporated, and then it included Milwaukee, and eventually it included Happy Valley. How did that redirection of funding get to be specialized like that, as opposed to the voters we were going to get more parks, more open space, and that was the whole purpose of having a district. So I don't have an answer, but I at least wanted to comment on some of the nuances there that are sitting, and I'll let it go at that. Thanks.
So Grover, could you just clarify? I don't think I caught the dollars redirected from what again? I'm sorry.
Well, when we formed one district, then it was all for one and one for all. And actually the first couple of years of the district, there was a Oak Grove board and a Jennings Lodge board and a Milwaukee board and et cetera, all contributing their ideas and what they needed and wanted. So it was, we were all in it together. Funding was all shared. And then the zones came in and progressively slid to that what happens in one zone, that money, SDC stayed in that zone. And that's how Happy Valley happened to walk away with $14.3 million and 6 paid for parks. Now, I don't know how many parks they had before they came into the district, but nonetheless, the $14.3 million, that's because it was isolated to be in Happy Valley only. And that was not what the ballot measure voted for. That is not what the vast majority of the members of NCPRD knew about or were aware of. And that's a big concern for me. And that is why it's important that we recover what SDCs are floating around and get it back into one district with all the funds being looked at what's the highest, best use to satisfy the promises made to form this special district by the taxpayers who are paying for it. And SDCs came along as part of it because, like schools and all the rest, get to collect on what they already have and how to maintain that. And that's what SDCs are about. It's not some special fund just for some people. So did that help any, Paul?
Yeah, that helps. A lot to tackle there. I will say that in 1990, of the documents that I read in 1990, that there's not a lot of no mention that I saw thus far of SDCs. I'm not even sure if there were SDCs at that particular point in time. That's probably a good question. But I also remind everyone that in 1990, Happy Valley was not in the original formation of the district. So 3-1 only included at the time the unincorporated area in the city of Milwaukee. And then later on in 2006 is when Happy Valley joined. SDCs were alive and well, and there was an agreement that spelled out, and confusion about what the agreement meant is what led to the dispute. We won't go there, that's complicated. But that's the only dollars. I think if you're talking about SDC dollars, that's probably can be either argued or questioned or whatnot. But I would say that it appears that all of the, as I know it, all of the SDCs raised in former Zone 1 and former Zone 2 that are after the separation from Happy Valley are still retained in the district.
So am I still talking?
Yes, you are.
Good. So I just want to clarify. So does that mean that whatever SDCs are in the district period are now in the district period? Because I heard you allude to earlier that the zones have gone away because Happy Valley left, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to have the zone structure as it is now because it actually is invalid in the sense of how it's mapped. So does that mean that all the SDCs that are currently in NCPRD are for NCPRD to be decided by the recommendations of the DAB and ultimately approved by the BCC, but it's not in the zony kind of pockets anymore?
Yeah. Well, I believe I recall correctly. I wasn't part of that committee, but I believe you were, Grover, and so I know that you're aware that your group that met, that subcommittee, that ad hoc subcommittee, decided to make them district-wide, all of them. And I believe, again, that has been pretty well assumed that is the case today, but it has not, I'm not sure it's been codified. So right. Codified, I mean either approved and formally action taken to state that in written form. And I don't know what it'll take. We need to get there. As a lot of people may know, some probably on the phone, I'll just say this, because of the negotiations and difficulties over the last 3 years with the city of Happy Valley and the district, the board of directors chose to cease the DAB meeting and not have regular meetings. So it's been very disruptive. It's been very unfortunate. I know it's caused a lot of headache. We've lost a lot of progress. It has not been a pleasant thing, but we're beyond that now. We need to move on. And I think that's really part of the discussion. We've had a lot of work to do. There are a lot of changes. The changes are still occurring, and we need to set a path to where we can be successful in the years to come. I will remind everyone again, my earlier comment with regard to about 5 or 6 years ago when we put on the ballot a bond, capital bond to, or a raise in the rate, that is, I'm sorry, an increase in the tax base to build new parks. that also included reforming the district into an ORS 266. So it would be a standalone district separated from the Board of County Commissioners and being basically governed by an elected board of residents from the district. So that's something that was brought forth by the DAB back in the 2012, 13, 14 was discussed. And I believe it's even embedded in some of the master plan documents that was one of the recommendations. So I think we have some opportunity. We need to have some discussions and see what our citizens in the district are interested in doing on how we move forward. But thank you for the question.
All right, excellent. Thank you very much for that, Commissioner Savas. Thank you again for the comment, Grover. We have another comment coming in from a couple people, but first I'd like to go to Administrator Schmidt, who I believe has an update on the budget question. Is that right, Gary?
I do. I want to thank staff who is listening in, who helped me, and I quickly looked online to the Ncprd budget. The total budget for Ncprd this fiscal year is $33 million. Of the income that comes in from property taxes only for this year, it is $6.2 million. That's all that comes in simply from property taxes. It does exclude the city of Happy Valley since they have withdrawn, but it's $6.2 million in property tax collection. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Gary. We have two more comments before. I think we said this first section was probably going to go about 45 minutes. I see we're approaching that. So perhaps after these next two, we'll go to the to you, Commissioner Savas, for some additional comments. But first, we'll take, I think it's going to be a second comment from Jan Lindstrom. Jan, go ahead and unmute yourself. There you go. And please keep it to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, my question is, I know the Ncprd District Advisory Board has an upcoming meeting, I believe on the 17th, is that right? And yes. There's some discussion about changing the makeup of the DAB. Can you address that a little bit about elected officials versus citizen participation, and maybe what the original intent of the advisory board was and what it evolved into and what people are hoping it will evolve back into. And then if it's possible, just to discuss the impact of COVID-19 on the parks budget. Was it hit very badly because there were no programs going on? Like the aquatic center wasn't open, nobody's playing basketball, so they're not paying fees. I just wondered if we have any information about that. Sorry, that's a two-part question. So first, DAB makeup, and then impact of COVID.
Okay, well, Jan, if it's okay with you, what I'd like to do maybe is tackle that in the next round, the last half in a Q&A, and then on your second part of your question, by that time, staff can at least get me an answer to that, and then we can respond back to you with that. How's that sound?
That sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that very much, Jan. Next we have probably the last comment before we go to Commissioner Savas for some responses. It is, I'm sorry, I forget the individual's name, but it is again the individual who is on the phone number of 409 ending in 409. So you are on.
Hi, Paul. This is Koitalainen again. I was wondering if you could check on this for me, but years ago, after we had gone to Salem to try to remove Jennings Lodge from Oregon City School District, I had heard that Oregon City had toyed with the idea of selling the old Jennings Lodge school, and they found out that when it was donated, the land was donated years ago, that anytime Oregon City no longer used that school, that it was to revert back to the people of Jennings Lodge. Do you have any way of checking on that? Because suddenly Oregon City quit talking about selling it.
Well, that's thank you for bringing that up. I'm not aware of that, but we can certainly look into it. I don't think we can get an answer for you tonight, but we can.
No, I understand that, but I thought, if that is the case, that might be a site for our future park.
Yeah. We'll definitely look into that. I know that Scott Archer, our director of Ncprd, is paying attention. He's on the line, I believe, or at least he was. So we'll look into that. I do want to point out that there's two schools in the Jennings Lodge area that are part of the Oregon City School District. This is Jennings Lodge School is one, and the second one is Candy Lane. And they're both pretty well in the vicinity of Jennings Avenue. So thank you for that.
Okay, excellent. So Commissioner Savas, that's right around the 45-minute mark. If you want to go ahead and respond to, everything in general.
Okay, well, great. If I may ask, maybe take about a 2-minute break. I need to get something to drink, a glass of water. So
Sure.
I'm gonna just pause for a bit, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oops. Thank you, Dylan. You gave me a chance to review all the topics that have been written down. So I've been scrolling that while you've been filling in for me. And so one we've heard is how to expand resources of the district and how our SDCs distributed. That's a summary. So I'll respond. Expanding resources of the district, I think, will have to be either the district going out for a bond, standalone bond, and or raising or reforming the district with a higher tax base rate. We're at 54 cents per thousand. It would take an increase to add that. Second one, how are SDCs distributed? SDCs are, how they're going to be distributed in the future is a good question. I guess it's going to be, that's to be determined. First of all, there's an eligibility for SDCs. They have to be capacity based. There's state law that dictates how SDCs are distributed and collected, actually. So we talked about the collection of SDCs. That's another one. And those are collected when development happens. We talked about that. And the person who pays the SDCs, if it's a developer's doing a subdivision, he will probably pay the SDC, but that's going to be embedded in the cost of the home or the business that's being built. So whoever the final property owner is, ultimately they do pay that SDC charge. How and where to site parks, we talked about that a little bit. That's going to be on availability. I think Councilor Beatty had accurately spoke about properties that might be dilapidated and acquired when properties come available. And if you can acquire one or two of those, ideally side by side or more, then you can get a larger piece of land in some of the more developed areas. We talked about schools. That could be an opportunity for that. Concord property is an example of one we acquired. So we're hoping to make progress on that in the coming years. Next one is how much money comes in from property taxes. We covered that, 6.2 million. Makeup of the DAB, impact of COVID on Ncprd. So that was Jan's question. So the makeup of the DAB in recent years has been, I believe it's been, actually got a copy of it right here, so I'll be accurate here. How it's defined in the current bylaws that we're operating under. 2 members from east of I-205, 2 members from west of 205, 1 member from the city of Happy Valley. Of course, they're not in the district any longer. 1 member from the city of Milwaukee, and 1 member from Milwaukee Center, and then 2 members at large, 1 from east and 1 from west of I-205. That's the current definition, basically a summary of those positions. And that makes up a total of, I believe the way it works, it's 7 to 9 members. I think we topped out at 9 most recently. So that's the current makeup. Your other part of your question, I believe, Jan, was about some of the recent discussions the DAB's been working on. If someone wants to raise that further, I will just say that the board of directors, Board of County Commissioners sitting as the board of directors for Ncprd last year tasked the DAB with revising the bylaws to adjust or conform to the withdrawal of Happy Valley. And in that also attain a balanced representation proportionally. And so we're looking, the DAB worked on that. We got pretty far. I thought we made good progress. There was compromise from a lot of folks. There were a couple votes that were taken that got us to a certain place. And essentially, one area I think we need to have more definition and work on improvement on, I think the City of Milwaukee properly identified that, and that is the geographic aspects of that. And I think that as the members of the DAB have spoke about that, the goal was to essentially try to make that geographic representation also population proportional. So for example, if I was to pull that map up again, I could show you areas where it's very, very dense, and there's a lot of population there. It happens to be west of 205, but I think it needs to be proportional to the population, not just myself, but I think that's what I've heard and I agree with that. And also needs to be geographic. So we need to make sure whatever those areas are, that they are, that there's accurate representation for that. So we have 100,000 people in the district. If there's 100,000 people, and let's just say there's 10 positions on the board, of the advisory committee or the advisory board, that would be 10 people that would accurately represent the population. And then that's a matter of geographically defining them to an area. The word zone doesn't work. The CPO model doesn't quite fit as far as the boundaries, not using the CPO, but using the CPO boundaries. So we need to work on that. But when I did go back and read the 1990 documents, the district was conceived and divided up to or perceived in about 7 different sub areas. So maybe that's what we ought to look at, is actually just tactfully, strategically looking at population and just drawing lines. I don't know. Well, that's something we can tackle. The other aspect that a lot of people have been talking about is whether or not there ought to be elected officials on there. Complicated issue. The DAB, I think, was a number of the members were trying to get balance there as well. And Milwaukee, by all rights, from the original documents that I could see, have the ability through the intergovernmental agreement with the county or the district to place on that DAB who they choose. I guess the same holds true for any other jurisdiction, including the county, if you will, or the board of directors for the district. And that's something we need to wrangle with. If there's further discussion tonight on that, I'd like to hear anyone else's thoughts on that. I think it's a little bit of a sticking point. And I think that going back to some of the points that have been made very strongly by others, some that are with us tonight, 3-1 defined the district advisory board role as a local residents, defined as local residents. I believe there's the spirit of that is that they are indeed our local residents. But in the formation discussions early on, the sub areas all had their own boards. That was the concept. They were their own boards. And Milwaukee happens to be the only one who accurately fulfilled all of that. They did just what they were supposed to do. And they had their advisory board. Now it's called the PARB. I believe it's Park and Recreation Board. They have their city council. So they're fulfilling the original intent of all that. It's the remainder of the district that has fallen short. And, as a county commissioner, I guess myself and my colleagues, and I'm trying to bring that to the attention of my colleagues, that we need to kind of bear some responsibility for that the shortfalls in the remainder of the district is not the fault of Milwaukee. It's really the fault, I think, of us not paying attention to the needs of the entire district. And that's kind of hard to do when few to none of the county commissioners in the past have lived in the district. I happen to be one of the few county commissioners over the last 30 years that actually has lived in the district. So I come at it from a different standpoint. But with that, I think we're at that point. Let me see. I'll just make up the DAB impact of COVID on Ncprd. Gary, do you have a response for that?
Yes, I do, Commissioner. So the answer is yes. There's been a significant reduction in program, facility, and park revenues because of closures. However, Ncprd staff has also reduced the expenses to equal that level of loss and reduction. So right now it's a net net zero situation. But as this continues and goes further, there will eventually be an issue where we may have to consider reducing services because of the loss of revenue. If I may, Commissioner, I also have a question for the Jennings Lodge School question. The NCPRD board did approve a cooperative agreement with the Oregon City School District for that school. NCPRD plans to do a master plan for a future neighborhood park on that site. And part of that agreement also is we have a first right of refusal to purchase the building and property should the school district ever sell that school beforehand. So wanted to offer that as well. Again, thanks to the excellent staff who's listening in and is helping me answer these questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So Dylan, I'm going to turn it back to you. And this is the part where it's, and I think we already did that. We didn't have a lot of callers in, so we did Q&A before, but if there's any follow-up Q&A, step on up, and Dylan, it's all yours.
Sure, very good. Thank you very much, Commissioner Savas. Okay, well, attendees, you heard the man. If you have any questions at all related to NCPRD and you want answers, just go ahead and pose your question right now. You can raise your hand, utilize the raise hand function on Zoom. That's at the top or bottom of your device. And again, we have 4 phone-in listeners. You can go ahead and hit *9, and that raises the hand as well. So any questions left for Commissioner Savas, or I'm sure County Administrator Schmidt would take them as well. I'm not sure I have much to offer on NCPRD, but I can try. Anybody at all? I thought I saw one hand briefly go up. There we go. Okay. Let's go ahead and go with, I'll just say Karen. I'm sorry, Karen. I think I'm just gonna, I'm not gonna say it the right way. So please go ahead and identify yourself and your general area, and please speak for 3 minutes. Thanks.
Yes, Karen Bjorklund. That's how you say that, Dylan. Bjorklund. From Jennings Lodge.
Oh, Karen, I'm sorry. I think something happened and you got muted there. Can you unmute yourself? There you go. Just start over right again. Very good.
Okay. And muting and unmuting is better than what happened to me earlier. I have an unstable internet. So okay. I'm in these meetings and I go away and come back and whatever. So what I wanted to do, so I didn't hear all of what was said. So forgive me if this has already been discussed, but while the commissioner was off getting a drink of water, Dylan was reminding us of the agenda for Monday night's meeting of the NCPRD board, and that the discussion would be about the bylaws. So I was wondering if there's anything else that hasn't been talked about yet this evening that will be important issues that need to be discussed relating to that bylaws discussion.
Okay. You know, I know what's on my mind, and I'm happy to share that. I'm not sure what's on the mind of my colleagues. The 2 sticking points, I thought that the DAB, well, the DAB got to, I mean, I'm just gonna put it out there. So the District Advisory Board, in their charge to refresh or review or update the bylaws, came to a point where, you know, the sticking issue over elected officials was voted on unanimously that evening. It was unanimous to allow an elected official from the city of Milwaukee and an elected official from the Board of County Commissioners, that if they resided in the district, to serve on there. We got to a yes on that, and that solved one issue. The other one was the representation, the geographic part that I spoke of earlier, how we divide that up, geographic and population, so that they're balanced. And I think that is that's a key factor. One of the things that I would like to really mention, that the good work of the DAB did, and I'm really kind of proud of this and proud of the members of the District Advisory Board for supporting it, was we put into play an opportunity for youth, for a special category, so that when someone's appointed to or they're being reviewed to be appointed to the DAB, that if they're a person that's in poverty, they're young, let's say they're a senior, or they are a youth, or that if they're a person of color, person who lives in poverty, disabled, for example, that they would have a higher, they would get extra points on their scoring if there was a competitive basis to be appointed to the board. So I'm really grateful that everyone on the DAB jumped on that. It's something that's been important to me for a long time, to make sure we have diversity on the advisory board, you know, both in age and people of color. And that was something we worked on late last year, early this year as well. And it seems to be awfully timely as well. The other one, I had it written down here. Excuse me a minute. No, I misplaced that. But there was one other key thing that we had done. Oh, that's right. That's what it was. We created an extra seat for the severely underserved area, and that way there could be extra advocacy to resolve that underserved area. And then when that area had good service or decent service and was improved, and another area was identified as being the severely underserved area, then someone might be selected from that area as well. So that was a tool basically to help get balance to the district. So at our very last DAB meeting, we had the chair of the commission come in, and he was not satisfied with the elected official situation, and felt it was wrong. And so we're kind of at an impasse there. And I believe the City of Milwaukee Council discussed that as well. And I believe they want to retain, as I understand, they want to retain their ability to have an elected official on the DAB. And they also don't feel that there should be an elected representative from the remainder of the district to help balance that out. So there's a little bit of a difference, or I would say somewhat of an impasse, because it's, again, the DAB did come to a unanimous decision through a lot of hard work. I didn't really I compromised my position of thinking there should be no elected officials on there. And I believe the Milwaukee representative also compromised her position, and we just thought we were end up in a good place. And if we can get to a good place, whatever that place is, that'd be great. But if we can't, then we're going to have to find a way. It's just been a very difficult matter, and I do know that has been something that's been pretty important to a number of folks. And I think the issue is because, and I think it's the disparity of the level of parks and the quality of the parks. And again, that's not a fault of Milwaukee's. That's really just 30 years we haven't really been successful. And so the only thing I would say, Karen, is that what I want to bring attention to is the history of the formation and these sub areas and how they were to be governed. And again, what I will say is hard to say. I like to have a visual, but basically I think the concept was there would be 7 sub areas. Each sub area would have its own advisory board, and then the representative of that advisory board would sit on the DAB. And then that would include elected officials if that were the case. There was no exclusion to that whatsoever. So, and I believe that concept in 1990 conceived that perhaps Gladstone would be part of that, and Happy Valley would be part of that, and the unincorporated areas was divided up into a few areas as well. So actually, if you read the bylaws, there's some remnants of that, the current bylaws, so there's some remnants of that model. And again, to Milwaukee's credit, they were the only ones who fulfilled that to the T and lived up to that, and they have their Parks Advisory Board. So they are very well represented. The remainder of the district and the unincorporated area is not. And that's something we need to work on in a way that they can be effective in shaping the district and shaping the future of the district. So that's about the only thing I know of that I will try to expand on that hasn't been spoken to very much at all in the last several months.
Thank you very much for that question, Karen. We appreciate it. We will go to the next individual. It is Grover. Grover, you are on. Please unmute yourself. There we go. Go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. I actually have two questions. One from what Gary Schmidt had to say, that the thing about Jennings Lodge and the school saying that they have first right if they should decide to sell it doesn't address, and I would appreciate if we could get some research on determining whether in fact the condition of having Jennings Lodge School donated to the community of Jennings Lodge carries with it an agreement that if it ever stops being school, it reverts to the citizens. So that's a different issue than having first right to buy it, because as a taxpayer, to pay for the things multiple times has always been a problem for me. So that's piece one. The other one, and I don't need an answer now, but I'd like to keep that alive and on the table. The other one is that, so in the meeting on Monday, it talks about a discussion and so on and so forth, and I think there's a real interest by all to move forward in finalizing the bylaws. Not much different than what the original May 16th of 2019 mandate from the Board of Directors was. But what I'm not clear, since there's an application process going on at this moment to recruit new board members, I'm a bit at a loss for what's the criteria for recruitment, because it still had that there would be 2 from east of 205 and 2 from west of 205, and then 1 from Milwaukee and 1 from Happy Valley and 1 from the community center, Milwaukee Center, and then 1 more from east and 1 from west. And when you look at the population spread, that doesn't fit proportionality. And that was one of our biggest challenge was we got, it was a tough fight. I don't like that word. It was a tough process because we really were outnumbered in the unincorporated area. We had people who were empathetic. So I'm curious, what will be the process on Monday? Will the board choose to follow the recommendation that at the conclusion of the DAB last set of sessions and recruit a board that fits that shaping, or will it go back to the standard that's in the bylaws as it sits? That's a question I don't know who can answer.
Well, that's a great question, Grover. I wish I had the answer. My hope is this. My hope is that there'll be a number of people that can, from the community that can speak to that. I imagine you'll be there as well, and others. I'm hoping that my colleagues on the board of directors will be thoughtful and maybe give a little bit of guidance or preference, but I think it's important to know the history lesson of how and what the concept was of forming the district in the first place. And that's going to take a commitment from my colleagues to spend the time on. So I'm going to try to get as much of that in advance. And I'm hoping they will. If they are going to rush it through, then I think there might be a lot of things that are maybe not quite settled, possibly could be settled in a way that might not be as fair as it could be, or thoughtful as it could be. So I don't have an answer of what's going to happen and what the appointment basis will be. I think it ought to, my personal opinion, I think it ought to follow the guidance of the work the DAB was working towards, and just identifying those geographic areas to make sure that they're, again, mathematically population proportional to the entire district. So that's the best I can do, Grover.
I got it. The thing that I did notice that in the reforming of the DAB and the filling the empty slots, the BCC did take some liberty to adjust things to make it work for the purpose of getting the bylaws done. And if we need to do that again, that'd be fine. Such that once the bylaws are fixed, then we could, through a normal cycling process, conform to those. But how we get them written and who does that is the big concern. And they seem to have the latitude when we reformed after the hiatus to reinterpret and or redirect how the slots were filled. So I hope they can be looking forward to doing that again, which pretty much is what you just said. But I wanted to raise that as a question because I'm scratching my head. I haven't applied yet, but I have a lot of interest and concern about how it goes, and I am sharing with you. I share with you the appreciation for the quality of work, even from people who didn't agree on a lot of topics. The time to spend working things through and finding something that was workable, it was a good accomplishment. That's
Yeah.
it.
Thank you, Grover. I just, one other thing I want to just say, just to add on to this. I want to be respectful of my colleagues, so I'm not trying to, but we have a lot on our plate. Gary, the administrator, knows we work really hard. We put in a lot of hours. We have so much on our plate. We have more on our plate than we can do our job very well, or do our job well on everything. We can't. And I think NCPRD is something that in the districts, the special districts or the service districts of the county, fall through the cracks, and they don't get the attention they deserve. And when I look at how other jurisdictions in the county operate or in the region operate, the city of Milwaukee as an example, they're professional, they are astute, they pay attention to what they're doing, they give parks the attention they need, they have a parks advisory board, they're a well-oiled machine. And I think that if the county Board of Commissioners, acting as the NCPRD Board of Directors, was just as engaged, that we'd be in a better place today. And that's why it is so important to realize, I think to some, and I try to make this argument in the DAB discussion, that the Board of County Commissioners does not really, we don't review the work of the DAB. I've been on the board for 10 years. We don't really review the work. It's just, if there's something that comes through, it comes through on the consent agenda. There's not regular meetings of the NCPRD Board of Directors. So the DAB is the place where everything happens. And so if that's how decisions are being made, it needs to be done as effectively and as fairly, and from a representation point of view or aspect, it needs to be as equitable as possible. So that is my hope, that my colleagues on Monday will wrap their heads around that a little bit and try to understand that, you know, we've just have not paid the attention the unincorporated area has needed over the last 30 years like it should have. And that, I'm speaking personally, so I'll stop there and take the next question.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Grover. Very much appreciate the question. Next up, question from Jan Carruthers. Jan, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you
Great.
for having me. I know I've spoken a couple times before, but this is a procedural question. And a couple of them. One, in the selection of once the board bylaws get changed, the selection seems to be in the hands entirely of the staff. Is there a role for citizens to be on the recruiting, selection, interviewing process? Just so that's another representative aspect.
Yeah, you know, we talked about that, and I'm looking for, I do know that we were changing the way that the nomination, it's called the nomination subcommittee, would work, and I believe it was crafted or drafted to be 2 Clackamas County staff, 2 members of the advisory committee, and 2 representatives from the community planning organizations within the district would be the interview or the nomination subcommittee.
Great.
So that was something that is in the draft revisions to the bylaws. And
Super.
so we were trying to be, again, and then the criteria that I spoke to earlier, whether you're a person of color or, you know, senior, youth, disabled, and so on, would be factors in the scoring to allow a person to score higher if they had fit one of that criteria.
Got it. And then the other procedure is a question of, does, for example, a bond for increasing the revenue, increasing the tax rate, or separating out as a division, a separate special district rather, does that need to come from the DAB does that need to come from the county? I mean, from the county as the county commission?
Well, in all practicality, it needs to come from everywhere and everyone. I think everyone needs to be on board with that. So that, you know, the DAB obviously would want to be in alignment with that. The staff would want to be in alignment. The Board of County Commissioners, the city of Milwaukee in this case involved, or any other city that might have interest in a new district. But under an ORS 266, the elected officials, if it's 5 members or 7 members, are elected either by structure, possibly by zone or precinct, but they would probably be geographically divided so that there be an equitable representation. But that's probably how that would be. But to your question, it does come from the Board of County Commissioners because they would place it on the ballot, and also come from the NCPRD Board of Directors, one of which both the same, basically wearing different hats. But yes, we had to be put on the ballot, but we would need some broad support because, again, just a few years ago, 5-6 years ago, we tried to do that and it didn't pass. So we would need a lot of energy, a lot more promotion from everyone and everyone on board. And I think we need to look at this as a very, going forward, as a very collaborative effort with some clear targets, and just keeping the kids and the families and the people we're serving in mind. And I think we need to run with that. I think we need to lead with that and lead with equity and diversity and all the other key things that are important to people today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jan, for that question. Next, we're going to go back to the phone caller with 409.
Yes, this is Coy Tollenan again. I wanted to interject that about 30 years ago when we were researching the old Jennings Lodge School, the property had been donated and the school itself was a WPA project. So Oregon City basically inherited the school when they decided to go with Oregon City. Oregon City had no part in building that school. So that might kind of help you on your research as far as using that as a park in the future. So it was a WPA project.
Well, darn.
And the land was donated.
Well, I'm inclined to call up one of my neighbors down the street, Michael Schmier, Oak Lodge history detective, see if I can get him all over that. Fascinating. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. And next, we are going to go back to Counselor Lisa Beatty. So Lisa, you are on. Go ahead and unmute yourself. There we go.
Great, thank you. So a few minutes back, Commissioner Savas made a fairly impassioned plea about how special districts don't get the attention they deserve. And I agree with him on that. And I actually think he made one of the most compelling arguments I have heard for incorporation, for why Jennings Lodge and Oak Grove should incorporate and become a city, so that you have a city council that is more narrowly focused on you than the county commissioners can ever be, because they have a whole big urban rural county to look out for. So I appreciate Commissioner Savas making the case for incorporation, and I hope you're all listening. I reach a different conclusion than him, however, because he thinks the answer to that is that he should sit on both the DAB and the deciding body, the Board of County Commissioners. I will tell you outright, I think that is patently unethical. You should not be able to sit on an advisory body for a body in which you are part of the deciding body. If Oak Grove or Jennings Lodge were to incorporate and have a city council, and they had a city councilor, they wanted to appoint a city councilor to the DAB, I would have no objection to that. If the Clackamas area were to incorporate and they wanted to have a city councilor on the DAB, I would have no objection to that. But the idea that someone from the Board of County Commissioners sits on the advisory body to the Board of County Commissioners is just I don't even see how that even passes the state ethics board, I will honestly say. So I think that is a discussion that should really come off the table. I will add a couple of other things. There was some talk about proportional, what's proportional east of the Clackamas area versus the Oak Lodge area. I don't want to speak for the whole I'm definitely not speaking for the whole Milwaukee City Council, but I will say in my view, I'm okay with you doing whatever is proportional. I am concerned that tonight we have only people from Oak Grove, Jennings Lodge, and a couple of us from Milwaukee. We don't have anyone who is identified as being from that area around Clackamas, whether east or west of I-205, the area between Milwaukee and Happy Valley. And I'm very concerned that that population was not aware of this meeting tonight. And I am very concerned that the DAB must include representation from that area. But that it be population proportional, I have no objection to that concept. Finally, on the point about the tax rate and the 54 cents per thousand, I was a big, that was 2014 that failed to pass. I think it failed to pass for a variety of reasons, including that the county sort of put it up in a muddled fashion by including both the vote for the new structure and the new tax and the vote for members of the new board. And I just think it was not really framed very well, and it had the potential to confuse. I will note that it passed in 3 of Milwaukee's precincts. It passed in at least 1 precinct in Oak Grove, but the further you moved out from that, the less well it did. So I'm a big supporter of coming back with another ballot measure for more money to support the district. I do think it will be incumbent on people in Jennings Lodge and in unincorporated Clackamas area to support that, because those are the areas that did not pass it last time. And I will also note that we pay 54 cents per thousand, as Commissioner Savas noted. In, I believe the rate in the Tualatin Valley Parks and Recreation District is almost $2 per thousand. So that's showing you how low our district is, how poorly funded our district is. It was, at the time of that 2014 vote, we were basically the least funded parks district of any district of our size in the state of Oregon. So I am a big supporter of coming back to the voters and trying to get that rate raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I wrote down, I got all but one. I don't think I got your third point, but I'll just cover them as I wrote them down. So I think most people who know me know that I've been a big advocate of incorporation since 1990 something, when I first started working on the Board of County Commissioners at the time to put away some money for a consultant to help us through that. And they finally did approve that in early 2000, 2001. And we did the first study, and then there was another one done. I put my own personal money into helping with that effort in both times as well. So I'm an advocate of that. Every time we seem to do that, though, we keep on coming back with a majority, two-thirds of the population saying no. And I don't know how we overcome that. And I think that we've got to find a way, and I know that from discussions of a lot of those people that I've been engaged with over the years, that we need to be extremely strategic, extremely tactful, and do it in a way that we have not done it before. And so we need to do it in a unique way. I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to disclose anything. But right now, there's apparently a couple different efforts about, and we're kind of concerned that maybe if there are too many ties in any particular jurisdiction, that might be the part that kills it, which is, I think, the argument for one of the efforts that happened in the past. So definitely agree with you on that. The other one is about the voting commissioner thing. And again, I'm inclined to think that advisory committee should be an advisory committee. I think it should follow 3-1, what the 3-1 says, the spirit of that language says, local residents. I don't think that implies it ought to be elected officials. I think as elected officials, we give up something. You know, we're not ordinary citizens any longer. We're public figures. And I think that's what that language in 3-1 basically meant. But there again, you go back and you look at the structure of what the was conceived back then prior to going on the ballot in 1990, and you can draw some other conclusions. I will add that as we look around the region and we look around the state and we look around the county, even within the county, that same conflict of interest that you described is everywhere, actually. There's a number of examples, and legal counsel has opined that it's not really a conflict of interest. Conflict of interest in the state of Oregon is basically if you have a personal interest or benefit, and there is no personal benefit or interest. And Commissioner Bernard and I sit on a committee. It's an advisory committee, and then we go and we advise afterwards. We have there's other districts in the region, in the state, that they have, not only do they have their district advisory board, but the chair of the advisory board happens to be an elected official of the board that formed the committee in the first place. There are multiple examples of that. So while I heard what you said, I don't necessarily adamantly disagree, but in effect, it's all around us. Again, I think with the fact that the Board of County Commissioners acting as the NCPRD Board of Directors does not review or tweak or modify anything. It's on the consent agenda. So it's not as though there's two hits at anything or there's a personal gain. So we can respectfully maybe have a different viewpoint on that. I get that. The last thing I wrote down that you mentioned was the tax rate and the 2 votes that it took. You're right. That is confusing, but as I understand it from legal counsel, because it's a district, the district's established on the 54 cents, you are required to dissolve the district and then reform the district with a new tax base. So that's why it takes 2 votes, one to dissolve and one to reform. And that's part of the conundrum with that one. And if we need any clarification or there's more interest in getting answers to that, I'm happy to dig a little bit deeper or dig out some documents from back in that period of time in 2014, as you mentioned. But thank you for your input. And thank you for your service on the council and your work on behalf of NCPRD through the council. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that, Councilor Beatty. All right, next we are going to go back to Karen. Karen, I will say it, Bjorklund. There we go. Okay.
Very good. We'll have you speaking Swedish in no time.
All right.
I wanted to go back to actually a point that was made by 2 different people about the recent effort to get a separate Parks District added tax. And one of the things that I heard a lot at the time from people who were concerned about that is a lack of trust based on all the underserved unincorporated areas, because they had put all that money into the Parks District from 1990 and hadn't gotten anything back from it, or they perceived that. So they were not very much in favor of adding more taxes because they didn't trust that they were going to see a result from that. So Commissioner Savas, the question I'd have to you then is, if there was a new effort, what would help? What kinds of things would you suggest would be useful to help people begin to trust that paying additional money would this time for sure get them some benefits?
Thank you, Karen, for the question. And I know that in 3-1, the ballot measure identified what they would do. And I believe the district did just that. They listed the items, bulleted them, I believe, in 3-1 of what it would accomplish. And I think in kind, that needs to be repeated. It needs to be whatever those things are that will be done. The fact that it's put in the ballot measure, and if it passes, that jurisdiction is bound to deliver within a time frame, a reasonable defined time frame. And if their homework's correct and they've got the right amount of money to do that with, the resources are there, and they act on it, then voila, we ought to be able to deliver. In thinking about this further and in recent discussions, the imbalance of the district, when we look at the map and where the assets are, I think the imbalance of the district is something that needs to be addressed, and that's something that didn't really happen in 2014. The proposal then was to add some facilities, and that was defined, but it really just really laid another layer of assets, park assets, on top of an imbalanced district geographically as far as where the assets were. And so everyone lifted, the rising water lifted everyone equally, but there's still that imbalance. And I think perhaps the areas, and Councilor Beatty is correct, and if you look at the precincts, the areas that suffered the most, I think if there was a little bit more in there to balance things out for them, to give them the confidence, that we would probably have a higher success of getting a positive vote. So I think it's really about equity. Grover's comment with regard to the monies, the tax base, the 54 cents and where it goes today, I think mathematically, if you look at it, obviously most of those monies that are going towards operations and programs are going to park facilities, and those park facilities are to the north of the district and not to the south. And you saw on there the scale of that investment. I believe it's well over $90 million since the life of the district. A property tax has been paid by the less served areas. Again, not a fault of any of the partners, but it is a reality. So I don't know. I guess in order to get the confidence of everyone, I think there needs to be a coming together of ideas and balance and equity and forgiveness and just a lot of goodwill. I think it's taken a lot of goodwill to get it across the plate, but we need to deliver, and I think those need to be specified in the ballot measure, and all the jurisdictions ought to get on board. And of course, scale, I will say scale is a big factor, and what I mean by scale is the larger the district, the more effective it can be with the dollars. We lost a partner, Happy Valley. If we can maybe gain a partner, like maybe Gladstone or some other areas, possibly, and have a fair, equitable arrangement, we can get some more scale in there. That might help with efficiencies and delivery of services, programs, and building of parks. So that's a long-winded answer, but that's a start.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that comment, Karen. Looking at the clock, we probably have time for one last question. If anybody out there would like to raise their hand, utilizing the raise hand function on Zoom, or again, hitting *9 on the phone. We still have 3 phone call-in listeners. And if we don't get that, then I'll probably kick it to Commissioner Savas for any closing comments. Commissioner Savas, I don't see any hands going up. So would you like to close?
Well, sure. Well, thank you everyone for participating. I was hoping we get more folks online tonight. Look forward to your input on Monday evening when the Board of County Commissioners meets. I believe that's 6 o'clock. It's a Zoom meeting. It won't be a live meeting. It'll be a Zoom meeting. So please attend and encourage others to attend. And we'll look forward to resolving this. It's our 30th birthday, the district's 30th birthday, if you will, come November. And I really think that we need to ask ourselves and get together and find a way to resolve any differences and in order to move the district forward. I think that if you look at Tualatin Valley or any other park district in the state of Oregon, they're all well above 54 cents per thousand. That's not an encouragement for people to have new taxes or see a tax increase. I know how painful that is, especially in these difficult economic times. But in practicality, one of our handicaps from the get-go was we started out at a very low tax base, and that's been part of that's one of the cracks from formation that has haunted us, and still continues to haunt us. So again, no fault of anyone. I just appreciate, again, the partnership and everyone's attention to this. And we'll look forward to seeing you Monday evening, and have a safe and wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Excellent. I'd like to thank Commissioner Savas and County Administrator Schmidt for joining us tonight. And in addition to the NCPRD board meeting coming up on Monday, I'd be remiss to not point out the next town hall that we have coming up. That is 1 week from tonight, and that is on the full Board of County Commissioners will be holding a town hall on race issues. This will be a listening session style event for residents to share lived experiences with race and racism in Clackamas County directly with Clackamas County Commissioners. The main thing I would like to point out to attendees is you can sign up to receive notifications about all of the board's digital meetings and everything that they do by going to our email list. I like to do this at the end of all our meetings. You can sign up for the Board of County Commissioners list, the monthly e-newsletter list, or several others, whatever you are most interested in. Our thanks to Rich Marvin, Garrett Teague, and Emily Klepper for making tonight happen. So for Administrator Schmidt and Commissioner Savas, please have a good night.